I wanna be your best friend. They act it, they act on the first. Oh yeah, they act on the first. They act it, they act on the first. Oh yeah, they act on the first. They act it, they act on the first. Oh yeah, they act on the first. They act it, they act on the first. Oh yeah, they act on the first. I wanna be your best friend. 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 You don't understand the feeling. They I can't 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 understand the feeling. They I can't.
You know, 7 cents.
Don't understand the feeling. They I can't 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 be feeling. They I can't be feeling. They I can't. Don't understand the feeling. They I can't 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 understand the feeling. They I can't.
7 cents. You know, 7 cents. You know, 7 cents.
Hi everyone, hi ladies. Thank you for joining me again for a live stream. Today was meant to be the IQ analysis. However, unfortunately, for some reason, I cannot get my this StreamYard to pick up on the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm not sure if it's because I do the PowerPoint in the current Windows iCloud, and it's not picking up somehow. It just won't show it on the screen. So unfortunately, we won't have that one. So I just decided to bring forward the Manosphere, live stream today. Let me just make sure I've got that on the screen. What I'm going to do in regards to the Manosphere is just have a look at why I think that the Manosphere isn't for light-skinned men. Because when we did the live stream 2 weeks ago regarding the 48 laws of power and light-skinned men, from my observation, I felt that light-skinned men did quite well out of that assessment. Oh, Miranda, can you hear me? I'm on a laptop, but it's on a headset. Let me unplug it and see if you can hear me. Kitchen. Is this better, or is the other thing better? Hello? Hi, everyone. Does this sound better, or I'm just going to plug it back in, or does this sound? Because I've got my brother's, he's got some kind of Dre Beats thing that I've got in my head. So without the headset, sounds better. The headset, this is how I sound, and it looks like it's coming up better because the sound quality looks higher. Let me just see if lowering the volume has stopped this slightly. Oh, just pause that and just up the volume. All right, can everyone hear me? I've upped the volume just to make sure everyone can hear me. Oh, both are okay. Okay, I'll stick with this one. I'll go without the headset because it just feels a bit better to go without the headset if possible. But if anyone has a problem, just let me know in the chat. Okay, so getting back on, after doing the 48 laws of power in regards to light-skinned men, I really thought that light-skinned men scored very well. And I thought, and it made me think, because when Light Skin Motivation and Anon had their live streams, we had a lot of men coming within those live streams, really pushing this manosphere narrative and this save yourself black man narrative. And it really got me thinking that, does this really apply to light skinned men? And that's what I wanted to kind of analyze this audio, and it might be from a gentleman some of you know and some of you don't know. Let's just bring him up. And unfortunately, I don't know if this will share, this screen will share pictures. Let me just see if I can bring up pictures of him and his mum. Okay, because the reason I wanted to use this person as an example as to why I don't believe that the manosphere specifically applies to light-skinned men unless you meet this criteria. I just wanted to kind of highlight my thoughts on that. Now, I'm just going to see if I can share my screen to show you this lady. Okay, where is she? Aha, here she is. Now, let me go into StreamYard and see if it will let me show you. Will I have to do that? Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. All right. Can you guys see this? It's running a bit slow. This is an old laptop for the kids. Okay. Right. This gentleman here, he's called Iceberg Slim. And he was a pimp back in the days, like the 1930s, 40s. He's a light-skinned, multi-generation mixed, because looking at his picture here, you can clearly see he's not strictly just black. However, this is a picture of his mother. Yeah, that's a picture of his mother. And again, she's very fair-skinned. I'm not sure what her background is, but she's light-skinned, could be biracial or multi-generational mixed person. And I thought, after hearing Iceberg Slim, because I bought his book about 10 years ago and I read it, and I thought the book was quite profound. However, I didn't actually realize that Iceberg Slim was light-skinned or multi-generational light-skinned person, either, or his mother. And it made his story all the more profound for me. So I'm just going to play, I think for this one, I'll put my mute on. I'm going to play an excerpt, the first chapter of his book. I'm just going to do it in parts because I don't want to be copyright struck and all of that. But for those of you who, and I want it to be more of an exercise, if you can, or if you do have it available, what I want you to jot down or write down, if you get a pen and paper, I want you to write down Iceberg Slim. So Iceberg, I want you to write down his mother, and I want you to write down environment. And as we go through the excerpts, I'm going to probably play 5-minute chunks, and then we'll stop and analyze and 5-minute chunks, because the first chapter is a good 25 minutes. So I just wanted everyone to listen and really assess what was going on in Iceberg Slim's life, because I think when you don't look at it through the prism of light-skinned, a light-skinned person's life, it's very easy to just consign this and just say, oh, black, whatever. But when I listened to it, the audio, and and it came up in my recommendations recently, and something just made me listen to it, and I thought, you know what, the Manosphere argument is a bit questionable here. So I'm going to start with Iceberg Slim, the first chapter, which is, let me just, his book is called Pimp, The Story of My Life, Iceberg Slim audiobook. It's 11 hours on YouTube if you have the time to listen to it on there. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to listen to the first chapter in chunks, which is called, someone nicely just laid out the chapters here, because I keep clicking on it. So the first chapter is called Torn from the Nest. So I'm going to start the story.
Chapter 1.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Torn from the nest. Her name was Maud.
Let me know if you can hear.
She Georged me around 1921.
Let me just pause.
I was only 3 years old.
Right. So I'm just going to pause this because I have to give a brief warning. Any young children in the room shouldn't be listening to this. Any young children, send them next door, or put some headphones on them, because this isn't for children. So let me just rewind slightly. Okay, so I'm just going to put this on and mute myself. If you can't hear, just say in the chat, because I'll be monitoring the chat and writing down myself, okay?
For you sexer. A whore ain't nothing but a trick to a pimp. Don't let him Georgia you. Always get your money in front, just like a whore. On the elevator riding to my pad, I thought about the first bitch who had Georged me, and how she had flim-flammed me out of my head. Chapter 1. Torn from the Nest. Her name was Maud, and she Georged me around 1921. I was only 3 years old. Mama told me about it. And always when she did, her rage and indignation would be strong and as emotional, perhaps as at the time when she had surprised her panting and moaning at the point of orgasm with my tiny head wedged between her ebony thighs, her massive hands vice-like around my head. Mama worked long hours in a hand laundry, and Maud had been hired as a babysitter at 50 cents a day. Maud was a young widow. Strangely, she had a reputation in Indianapolis, Indiana, as a devout holy roller. I have tried through the years to remember her face, but all I can remember is the funky ritual. I vaguely remember not her words, but her excitement when we were alone. I remember more vividly the moist, odorous darkness and the bristle-like hairs tickling my face, and most vividly, I can remember my panic. when in the wild moment of her climax, she would savagely jerk my head even tighter into the hairy maw. I couldn't get a breath of air until, like a huge black balloon, she would exhale with a whistling whoosh and relax limply, freeing my head. I remember the ache of the strain on my fragile neck muscles, and especially at the root of my tongue. Mama and I had come to Indianapolis from Chicago, where since the time when she was 6 months pregnant, my father had begun to show his true colors as an irresponsible white spats-wearing bum. Back at that small town in Tennessee, their hometown, he had stalked the beautiful virgin and conned her into marriage. Her parents, with vast relief, gave their blessing and wished them the best in the promised land up north in Chicago. Mama had 10 brothers and sisters. Her marriage meant one less mouth to feed. My father's father was a skilled cook, and he passed his know-how to my father. Shortly after getting to Chicago, scored for a chef's job at a huge middle-class hotel. Mama was put on as a waitress. Mama told me that even with both of them working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, they couldn't save a nickel or buy furniture or anything. My idiot father had come to the big city and gone sucker wild. He couldn't stay away from the high yellow whores with their big asses and bitch dog sexual antics. What they didn't con him out of, he lost in the cheat crap joints. At the hotel one night, he vanished from the kitchen. Mama finally found him thrusting mightily into a half-white waitress lying on a sack of potatoes in a storage room, with her legs locked around his back. Mama said she threw everything she could lift at them. They were unemployed when they walked away from the shambles. My father tearfully vowed to straighten himself out and be a man, but he didn't have the will, the strength to resist the cheap thrills of the city. After my birth, he got worse, and had the stupid gall to suggest to Mama that I be put on a Catholic church doorstep. Mama naturally refused, so he hurled me against the wall in disgust. I survived it, and he left us, his white spats flashing, and his derby hat at a rakish angle. It was the beginning of a bitter winter. Mama packed pressing irons and waving combs into a small bag and wrapped me warmly in blankets, and set out into the bleak, friendless city to ring doorbells, the bag in one arm and I in the other. Her pitch was something like this. Madam, I can make your hair curly and beautiful. Please give me a chance. For 50 cents, that's all. I will make your hair shine like new money. At this point in the pitch, Mama told me she would slip the blanket aside to bare my wee big-eyed face. The sight of me in her arm on a sub-zero day was like a charm. She managed to make a living for us.
Okay, that's the first 5 minutes. What did you guys note for Iceberg Slim, his mother, and the environment? I'll give you what I've noted so far. So far in Iceberg Slim's life, he'd been subject to sexual abuse. He didn't have a father who cared about him. He was also subject to physical abuse as a baby. He had an unstable environment. Unstable, unsafe environment. His mother, she was a lone parent, working, wasn't pedestalized despite her light skin. And this is why it's important to look at these things, these historical events differently. Because remember this, although Iceberg Slim is a pimp and not a desirable, not leading a desirable life, that we'd want our children or people we'd know to live. He's actually giving you a synopsis of a time when supposedly light-skinned people were privileged, on top, the world was at their feet. And for the mother, she was a lone parent, she was working, The husband didn't sound like he was someone who was particularly rich, who came looking for her because he saw this light-skinned woman and wanted to pedestalize her and look after her. He just kind of conned her parents. Well, he didn't really con her parents, because from the sounds of it, it looked as though the parents were complicit in allowing their daughter to kind of go with anyone, that she had no protection because she was seen as a liability, which goes against the narrative that light-skinned women were treasured, they were protected, they were treated better than the average Black woman of those times. And also, she was a waitress, so she didn't have any special kind of job. Waitress, no privilege. She seemed very emotional. And she had a lot of broken promises from her husband. Now, the environment, that's a good observation, Miranda. Dysfunctional environment, of course. Also, it was unsafe. It was a poor environment. Light-skinned women seem to be the worst in society, because this gentleman was talking, Iceberg Slim was talking about how his father couldn't keep away from the high yellow whores. Oh, hi Caesar, thank you. That's fine for being late. Don't worry, things happen, and it's quite late over here. It's like after midnight over here, so that's fine. Don't worry about it. We're just going through Iceberg Slim's chapter 1 of his biography, because looking at the light-skinned men against the 48 laws of power, which I did 2 weeks ago, I felt that light-skinned men had a lot more going for them than they actually realized, and that this whole manosphere thing that's being projected doesn't actually really apply to a lot of them, unless they've had the kind of life that Iceberg Slim has had, because Iceberg Slim is a light-skinned, multi-generational ethnic person. His mother is light-skinned, and I think he was light-skinned. He got darker as he got older, but he was light-skinned. So we're just gone over the first part in the books, in part one of his, in part one, chapter 1 of his book. And we're just looking at the book in terms of Iceberg Slim, his mother, and the environment. And the other thing that I just wanted to say, if you can know any other characters, and what you felt those characters, what role they played in this. Was it a functional role? Was it a dysfunctional role? So I'm just going to get on and play the next part. If anyone's got anything to add, just put it in the chat and I'll address it in the next part. So I'm just going to get on to part 2.
That spring with new friends of Mama's. We left Chicago for Indianapolis. We stayed there until 1924, when a fire gutted the hand laundry where Mama worked. There were no jobs in Indianapolis for Mama, and for 6 months, we barely made it on the meager savings. We were penniless and with hardly any food when a tall Black angel visiting relatives in Indianapolis came into our lives. He fell instantly in love with my lissom, beautiful mother. His name was Henry Upshaw, and I guess I fell as hard for him as he fell for Mama. He took us back to Rockford, Illinois with him, where he owned a cleaning and pressing shop, the only Negro business in downtown Rockford. In those tough Depression times, a Negro in his position was the envy of most Negro men. Henry was religious, ambitious, good, and kind. I often wonder what would have happened to my life if I had not been torn from him. He treated Mama like she was a princess. Anything she wanted, he got for her. She was a fashion plate, all right. Every Sunday when we all three went to church in the gleaming black Dodge, we were an outstanding sight as we walked down the aisle in our fresh, neat clothing. Only the few Negro lawyers and physicians lived as well, looked as well. Mama was president of several civic clubs. For the first time, we were living the good life. Mama had a dream. She told it to Henry. like the genie of the lamp, he made it a reality. It was a 4-stall, opulent beauty shop. Its chrome gleamed in the black and gold motif, and was located in the heart of the Negro business section, and it flourished from the moment its doors opened. Her clientele was for the most part whores, pimps, and hustlers from the sprawling red light district in Rockford. They were the only ones who always had the money to spend on their appearance. The first time I saw Steve, he was sitting getting his nails manicured in the shop. Mama was smiling into his handsome olive-tinted face as she buffed his nails. I didn't know when I first saw him that he was the pinstripe snake who would poison the core of our lives. I certainly had no inkling that last day at the shop, as live billows of steam hissed from the old pressing machine each time Henry slammed its lid down on a garment. Jesus! It was hot in that little shop, but I loved every minute of it. It was school vacation time for me, and every summer I worked in the shop all day, every day, helping my stepfather. That day, as I saw my reflection on the banker's expensive black shoes, I was perhaps the happiest black boy in Rockford. As I applied the soul dressing, I hummed my favorite tune, Springtime in the Rockies. The banker stepped down from the shine stand, stood for a moment as I flicked lint from his soft, rich suit. Then, with a warm smile, he pressed an extravagant 50-cent piece into my hand and stepped out into the broiling street. Now I whistled my favorite tune, Shine for only a dime, what a tip. I didn't know at the time that the banker would never press another coin into my hand, that for the next 35 years this last day would be remembered vividly as the final day of real happiness for me. I would press $5 bills into the palms of Shine boys. My shoes would be handmade, would cost 3 times as much as the banker's shoes, but my shoes, though perfectly fitted, would be worn in tension and fear. There was really nothing out of the ordinary that day, nothing during that day that I had heard or saw that prepared me for the swift, confusing events that over the weekend would slam my life away from all that was good to all that was bad. Now, looking back, remembering that last day in the shop as clearly as if it were yesterday, my stepfather, Henry, was unusually quiet. My young mind couldn't grasp his worry, his heartbreak. Even I, a 10-year-old, however, knew that this huge, ugly black man who had rescued Mama and me from actual starvation back in Indianapolis loved us with all of his great, sensitive heart. I loved Henry with all my heart. He was the only father I ever really known. He could have saved himself an early death from a broken heart if instead of falling so madly in love with Mama, he had run as fast as he could away from her. For him, she was brown-skinned murder in a size 12 dress. That night at 8 o'clock, Dad and I flicked the shop's lights out, as always at closing. In an emotion muffled voice, he spoke my name. Bobby. I turned toward him and looked up into his face, tense and strained in the pale light from the street lamp. I was confused and shaken when he put his massive hands on my shoulders and drew me to him very lightly, just holding me in this strange, desperate way. My head was pressed against his belt buckle. I could barely hear his low, rapid flow of pitiful words. He said, Bobby, you know I love you and your mama, don't you? His stomach muscles were cording, jerking against my cheek. I knew he was going to burst into tears.
Okay, everyone, that was the second segment. What are you guys thinking? What I noticed for the second segment was that Iceberg Slim, he found a father. He began to develop a moral compass. He started to develop self-esteem. He felt safe. He actually became entrepreneurial at a point where he opened up his little shoe shine business outside of his stepfather's shop so he could earn extra money for himself. And I'm not sure if you guys grasped the fact that him doing his little entrepreneurial side business actually earned the same amount that his mother earned when they were destitute, and she was doing people's hair for the same 50 cent that the banker just gave to him for shining his shoes. I would also say that Iceberg Slim felt loved. He felt loved by Henry, and I would say that Henry's character was very functional. It spoke about him having a moral compass, going to church, having set rules, living his life by a code. And then we hear of this guy Steve, who comes in. He's getting his nails manicured. So obviously, and there's a bit of a metaphor there. He's getting his hands manicured. So that doesn't tell you that he's a man that works with his hands. He's not a hardworking man. He's someone who's going to rely on his other things, such as charm, gift of the gab, that type of thing. So that's what I noted about Steve. In terms of his mother, I noted down that in terms of what women get, she got her white knight. She got her white knight, which was Henry. Now, he didn't come in the package that I'm sure she would have liked him to come in, but she got her white knight. This being with Henry also elevated her status. She was able to join civic club and be part of society instead of being on the fringes of society. She started her. Henry enabled her to start her own business. But for me, she also showed lack of clarity because of the beginning of this entanglement with herself and Steve. And also at this point, she was beginning to put herself first. She wasn't really thinking about the best interest of Iceberg Slim, her son. I put that the environment was respectable, socially acceptable, stable, belonging to a community, because now they belong to a social group. They weren't outsiders. They weren't nomads. That they were beginning to form part of the social circle through the mother and through Henry and his job. Also, they talked about how they were respectable. So Henry elevated not only the mother but elevated Iceberg Slim's status as well, and his acceptance of them. His acceptance of them gave them status within the society, and they lived on par with doctors and people of that ilk within that era. So they were in a good environment, socially stable. They were part of a network, a social network now, and things were looking up. Then Steve has come along. What were your guys' observation? Okay, Miranda's put people coming and going out of his life, no stability, does not like light-skinned females. Okay. Hi, LSP, the golden artist. Yeah, no, I did note that as well. Well, I think at that point, I don't think he demonstrated a like or dislike for women. I think at this point, he still seems quite naive, still very innocent at this point. And that's what I find interesting. So I'm going to play the next excerpt. So just to let you know, LSP Golden Artist, I couldn't do the IQ one, so I've done the Manosphere one. And just to give you a brief synopsis, I did this because I did the light-skinned men against the 48 laws of power. I thought that light-skinned men scored well in terms of the 48 laws of power. And it made me think, how does this Manosphere apply to light-skinned men? Because I did note that when Light-Skin Motivation and Anon had their lives, we did get a lot of this Manosphere talk, save yourself, black men, MGTOW, and all of those talking points. But do those talking points specifically include light-skinned men automatically? And I think it does, if you've led the kind of life that Iceberg Slim has led, because the chapter 1 in his book lays the foundation for his life, and there'll be some more talking points further on where you will see, well, you'll be able to draw some dots for yourself. But I'm going to play the next part. So I'm just going to play that now and mute myself. If you can't hear anything, just put it in the chat and I'll work my technical magic somehow.
I said as I squeezed my arms around his waist. Yes, Daddy, yes, Daddy. We love you too, Daddy. We always will, Daddy. He was trembling as he said, You and your mama would never leave me. You know, Bobby, I ain't got nobody in the world but you two. I just couldn't go on if you left me alone. I clung tightly to him and said, Don't worry, Daddy. We'll never leave you. I promise. Honest, Daddy. What a sight we must have been. The 6'6" black giant and the frail little boy holding on to each other for dear life, crying there in the darkness. I tell you, when we finally made it to the big black Dodge and we were riding home, my thoughts were turning madly. Yes, poor Henry's fears had foundation. Mama had never loved my stepfather. The wonderful man had only been a tool of convenience. She had fallen in love with a snake, all right. His plan was to cop Mama and make it to the Windy. The dirty bastard knew I would be excess baggage, but the way Mama was gulping his con, he figured he could get rid of me later. Only after I had become a pimp years later would I know Steve's complete plot and how stupid he really was. Here this fool had a smart square broad with a progressive square John husband infatuated with him. Her business was getting better all the time. Her sucker husband was blindly in love, and the money from his business was wide open to her. If Steve had been clever, he could have stayed right there on top of things and bled a big bankroll from the business in a couple of years. Then he could have pulled Mama out of there, and with a big bankroll, he could have done anything with her, even turned her out. I tell you, she was that hot for him. She had to be insane over the asshole to walk away from all that potential with only $2,500 in cash. Steve blew it in a Georgia skin game within a week after we got to Chicago. I have wished to Christ, in 4 penitentiaries, that the lunatic lovers had left me in Rockford with Henry when they split. One scene in my life I can never forget, and that was that morning when Mama had finished packing our clothes and Henry lost his inner fight for his pride and dignity. He fell down on his knees and bawled like a scalded child, pleading with Mama not to leave him, begging her to stay. He had welded his arms around her legs, his voice hoarse in anguish, as he whimpered his love for us. His agonized eyes walled up at her as he wailed, Please don't leave me. You are sure to kill me if you do. I ain't done nothing. If I have, forgive me. I will never forget her face as cold as an executioner's, which she was, as she kicked and struggled loose from him. Then, with an awful grin on her face, she lied and said, Henry, honey, I just want to get away for a while. Darling, we'll be back. In his state, she was lucky he hadn't killed her and me and buried us in the backyard. As the cab drove us away to the secret rendezvous with Steve sitting in his old Model T, I looked back at Henry on the porch, his chest heaving as tears rolled down his tortured face. There were too many wheels within wheels, too much hurt for me to cry. After a blank time and distance, we got to Chicago. Steve had vanished, and Mama was telling me in a drab hotel room that my real father was coming over to see us, and to remember that Steve was her cousin. Steve was stupid, all right, but cunning, if you can get what I mean. Mama, at Steve's instruction, weeks before, had gotten in contact with my father through a hustler brother of Mama's in Chicago. When my father came through the hotel door, reeking of cologne and dressed to kill, all I could think was what Mama had told me about that morning when this tall, brown-skinned joker had tossed me against the wall. He took a long look at me. It was like looking in a mirror. His deep-down guilt cream-puffed him, and he grabbed me and squeezed me to him. I was stiff and tense in the stranger's arms, but I had looked in the mirror too when he came in, so I strung my arms limply around his neck. When he hugged Mama, her face turned toward me and stony like back there with Henry. My father strutted about the hotel room boasting of his personal chef's job for Big Bill Thompson, the mayor of Chicago. He told Mama and me, "I'm a changed man now. I have saved my money, and now I really have something to offer my wife and son. Won't you come back to me and try again? I am older now, and I bitterly regret my mistakes of the past." Like a black widow spider spinning a web around her prey, Mama put up enough resistance to make him pitch himself into a sweat, then agreed to go back to him. My father's house was crammed with expensive furniture and art pieces. He had thousands of dollars invested in rich clothing linens. After a week, my hustler uncle brought Steve to visit us and to case the layout. My father bought the cousin angle and broke out his best cigars and cognac for the thieves. It was another week before they took him off. Remember, at the time I had no idea as to what really was going to happen. I would learn the shocking truth only after we got to Milwaukee. On that early evening when it happened, Mama was jittery as we prepared to visit some close white friends of my father. I had a wonderful time getting acquainted with the hostess' children, who were around my age. Too soon it was time to go home. In my lifetime, I have seen many degrees of shock and surprise on the human face. I have never seen on any face the traumatic disbelief and shock on my father's face when he unlocked the door and stepped into his completely empty house. His lips flapped mutely. He couldn't speak. Everything was gone. All the furniture and drapery, everything from the percolator to the pictures on the wall, even my mama's belongings. Mama stood there in the empty house clinging to him, comforting him, sobbing with real tears flowing down her cheeks. I guess she was crying in joy, because the cross had come off so beautifully. Mama missed her calling. She should have been a film actress. With only a bit part, an Oscar season would have been a lead pipe cinch for her. Mama told my father we would go to Indianapolis to friends until he could put another nest together. When we got to Milwaukee by train 90 miles away, Steve had rented a house. Every square inch of that house was filled with my father's things. Those lovely things did us little good and brought no happiness. Steve, with his mania for craps, within weeks had sold everything, piece by piece, and lost it across the craps table. Mama worked long hours as a cook, and Steve and I were alone quite often. At these times he would say, "You little motherfucker, you. I'm going to beat your motherfucking ass. I am telling you, if you don't run away, I am going to kill you."
Okay, back again. Now, I don't know what you guys have jotted down, but this is what I got from Iceberg Slim's perspective. He was seen as baggage. He was scared to leave Henry, the father that he'd known. I think he found them when they were a baby, and he was roughly 10 or 12 when the mother met Steve and moved on. So he had known Henry as a father for the bulk of his life. I'm just thinking. Right, he didn't trust his father. He saw Henry as a father. I can't see what I wrote here because I've done some joined up writing. I can't read it. Okay, but for his mother, I put insanity because she wasn't thinking right. And I'm going to tell you why at the end she wasn't thinking right, but she wasn't thinking right. Also, her conning Steve was a Pyrrhic victory for me, because in the end she did all of that and Steve still got rid of their furniture. He still gambled away everything that she got back from her husband by by sort of arranging for him to get robbed. So they didn't gain anything from it, and that happened at the cost of Iceberg Slim losing his respect for his mother, because he sees that she's not as innocent as he thought that she was. And also for the mother, I noted that she did not protect Iceberg Slim. Her main purpose as a mother is to protect your child. She told Iceberg Slim when that lady sexually abused him, because he said when his mother told him, she would talk and she would get angry, but he never said that his mother did anything to the woman who abused him when he was 3. She never did anything to abuse him while she was 3. And then she was involving him in her lies and deceit, saying to him, "Oh, remember, tell when you meet your dad, remember, tell him that Steve is a cousin." So she wasn't doing anything to protect him. She was almost living as though her son was an accessory to her life, and she was the priority, as opposed to Iceberg Slim being the child and being a priority. So she wasn't protecting Iceberg Slim, and she was beginning to involve him in this duplicitous life, away from the morals, away from the structure that Henry had created for him. So she was pulling him down where she was going. I didn't really know anything for the environment, other than it's currently an uncertain environment, because Henry is no longer providing the stability for her and Iceberg Slim. Did anyone else get anything from that? Did anyone else want to add anything to that? I'm sorry, telling Stuart. What we're doing is we're listening to Iceberg Slim, because after I did the live 2 weeks ago regarding light-skinned men and the power of the 48 laws of power, because I felt that light-skinned men scored very highly on that. We only got halfway through the powers. It made me think, because light-skinned motivation and Anon, on their lives, they received a lot of men coming on the lives discussing MGTOW talking points, save yourself, black men, and this manosphere argument about women. And to be quite honest, I felt in line with what I'd assessed from. Oh, thank you, Michael, for pointing that out. Thank you. Yeah, so liking this would really help everyone. But from that, I just felt that there was more to this manosphere thing, in terms of, does the manosphere, MGTOW, save yourself, black men argument really apply to light-skinned men? And by the end of this, I'm going to tell you why I feel it doesn't. And anyone else can chime in and say why they feel it does. But I think it only applies in the circumstances that we're listening to in Iceberg Slim's story. So we're just going down, breaking down the different elements of his story, because they're going to be the talking points as to why someone like Iceberg Slim, who eventually became a pimp, he lived his life on the margins of society, and he didn't really develop into the man that he wanted to be. And we're going to just delve into that. Let me just get back on. Right, I'm just going to play the next segment, and then. So remember, everyone, just jot down what you think. Whatever it is, it's all pertinent, because it's all about people. No one's wrong. Okay, I'm just going to mute myself.
He was just so cruel to me. My mother had brought me a little baby cat. I loved that kitten, and this man hated animals. One day, the cat, being a baby cat, did his business on the kitchen floor. Steve said, "Where is that little motherfucker?" The little kitten had hidden under the sofa. He grabbed that kitten and took it downstairs where there was a concrete wall. He grabbed it by the heels. I was standing. We lived on the second floor, looking down at him. He took the kitten and beat its brains out against that wall. I remember there was a park behind our house. concrete covered. There were some concrete steps. I sat there and I cried until I puked. All the while I kept saying like a litany, I hate Mama, I hate Mama, I hate Mama. And I hate Steve, I hate Steve, I hate him, I hate him. For many tortured years, she would suffer guilt. She had made that terrible decision on that long-ago weekend. I know my lousy old man deserved what happened to his goods. I know Mama got her revenge, and it was sweet, I am sure. But it was bitter for a kid like me to know that Mama was part of it. Perhaps if Mama had kept that burglary cross secret from me, in some tiny way, I might have been stronger to fight off that pimping disease. I don't know. But somehow after that cross, Mama just didn't seem like the same honest, sweet Mama that I had prayed in church with back in Rockford. I went to her grave the other day, and I told her for the 100th time since her death, Mama, it wasn't really your fault. You were a dumb country girl. You didn't understand. I was your first and only child. You couldn't have known how important Henry was to me. I choked up, stopped talking to her beneath the silent sod, and thought about Henry lying rotten, forgotten in his grave. Then through my tight throat I said to Mama, to you, he was ugly. But Mama, I swear to heaven, he was so beautiful to me. I loved him, Mama. I needed him. I wish you could have seen beyond his ugly black face and loved him a little and stayed with him. Mama, we could have been happy. Our lives would have been different. But I don't blame you. Mama, I love you. I paused, looking up at the sky. Hoped she was up there and could hear me. And then I went on. I just wish you were alive now. You would be so proud of me. I am not a lawyer as you always wanted me to be. But Mama, you have 2 beautiful grandchildren and another on the way, and a fine daughter-in-law who looks a lot like you when you were young. The grave next to her had visitors, and an old man with a bright-eyed girl about 10. I stopped my bragging until the pair walked away, and then I said, Mama, I haven't shot any H in 10 years. I haven't had a hoe in 5 years. I have squared up. I work every day. How about it, Mama? Iceberg Slim, a square. You wouldn't believe it, Mama. I wear $50 suits right off the rack, and my car is 10 years old. You gotta believe it now, Mama. Goodbye, Mama. See you Christmas. And remember, I'll always love you. When I walked away from her grave, I thought, I don't know. Maybe that drinker was right when I become a pimp because of my unconscious hatred for my mother. I know one damn thing. I can't help crying at her grave almost as if I was crying because I did so much to put her there. Maybe the hidden hate that I can't feel wants me to laugh that she's down there in the earth. Maybe my crying is really laughing. About 90 days after Steve smashed my kitten, Mama cast off her spell, and one gray April dawn, while Steve lay in a drunken open-mouthed stupor, Mama and I packed what we could carry and moved into a hotel room. It was complete with hot plate and down-the-hall toilet. Steve had stomped on 3.5 years of our lives. I would soon be 14. On August 4th, my birthday, our old friend Steve, with diabolical timing, made that event unforgettable. Since that chilly dawn in April, he had searched the slum streets for his escaped dupes, thirsty for revenge. I waited eagerly in the hotel room for Mama, who had promised to bake a cake in her white woman's kitchen. She said she would be home early at 6 o'clock to celebrate my birthday. Well, she came home all right on the 7th of August from a hospital, with her broken jaw wired and her body covered with bruises. Steve had stalked her and attacked her with his fists and feet, and then escaped through the grimy catacombs of the ghetto. All that night and the next day, I crouched in the dark shadows beneath his stairwell, gripping a gleaming ice pick. He never came back. He had moved. 20 years later, while idly looking from the window of a plush hotel suite, I would see something familiar in the white-haired, stooped figure of a garbage collector on the street 3 stories down. I blacked out. When reason returned, I was down there on the street in the bright morning sunlight, clutching a pistol, wearing only a pair of red silk pajamas. As the garbage truck turned the corner a block away out of range, a small crowd of passerbys stood, bug-eyed, watching the strange scene as Rachel, my main whore, tugged at my arm, pleaded with me to get off the street. That was the last time I saw Steve, but I just don't know, even now, what I would do if our paths crossed. Perhaps that beating Mama took was good, as painful as it was. I remember how it worried me in that cruddy hotel room when the hotel's neon sign outside our window would flash on her face. Her eyes would be bright, riveted on the ceiling. She would be in a trance, remembering, still hot for him. As worthless as that bastard was otherwise, he sure must have been a son of a bitch in the bed. After all he had done to us, she still had a terrible itch for the bastard. That beating was good for her. It cured the itch. Mama had learned a bitter lesson the hard way. The country girl had rolled in the hay with a city slicker, and now I saw all of her sorrow and guilt in her eyes. We couldn't go back to the peaceful green hills of Rockford. She had destroyed a good man back there, a native son. Henry died a year after we left him. Until the grave claimed her, Henry would rise from his own to haunt her in the lonely gloom. Mama was desperate to save at least fragments of her image, to hold fast to the love and respect I had for her in Rockford. I had seen too much, had suffered too much. The jungle had started to embalm me with bitterness and hardness. I was losing page by page the fine rules of thought and deed that I had learned in church, from Henry, from the Boy Scout troop in Rockford. I was sopping up the poison of the street like a sponge. I had begun to play Steve's favorite game, craps, in the alleys after school. Dangerously, I was frantic to sock it to every young girl weak enough to go for it. I had to run for my life one evening when an enraged father caught me on his back porch, punching animal-like astraddle his daughter's head. I had become impatient with the unusual thickness of her maidenhead. Chapter 2. First Steps.
Okay, so that was chapter 1 of Iceberg Slim, a light-skinned, multi-generational mixed man. And that chapter represented the first part of his life. Now, the reason I used him as an example is based on what happened to him. And as we saw towards the ending of the chapter, we could see the hatred for his mother developing because she never really protected him. She never protected him against. She didn't protect his innocence She didn't protect his innocence physically because she had to go out and work, and this babysitter sexually abused him. She didn't protect him against his father. She didn't protect him against Steve. And the only man that gave Iceberg Slim protection, she took away from him. And it's this lack of protection that made Iceberg Slim start to hate his mother. And it was quite interesting for me when, just to point out, where he's talking to his mum when she died at the grave. This man's in his 50s talking to his mother in the grave, still talking about Henry, still crying about Henry. And that to me shows that what a profound effect Henry had on Iceberg Slim's life. And the fact that he can look back and say, well, I know that I wouldn't have led the life that I have led if Henry was still in our lives. Henry outlined structure. Henry gave us respectability. Henry gave us something to strive for as a young man, because remember, when he was with Henry, he was being entrepreneurial, he had self-esteem, he was doing a lot of things that young men should be doing to develop themselves. He was going to work with Henry. Henry was obviously showing him the ropes, showing him how to be a man, taking responsibility, and his mother took him away from all of that. A few things I did note from that is I felt that Iceberg Slim loved Henry more than he loved his mum. I think with his mother, he had a very fine line between love and hate when it came to her, and I think that manifested in the career choice that he created ultimately. And yes, Miranda, trust issues, because he could see how duplicitous his mum was and the scheming she did, scheming against a good man, to get with someone who was clearly unsuitable and someone who didn't have their best interest, either Iceberg Slim's best interest or her interest as a woman in mind. And I think he lost his respect for his mum in regards to that. Also, I did note that he said that his mum was a poor country girl, and he forgave her the fact that she didn't know what she was doing. She wasn't very worldly. She wasn't very worldly, and he forgave her. But to be quite honest, I still don't think he forgave her. I think he used that as a caveat, so he could forgive her, but he didn't forgive her, because this was a ritual that he did every year, going to his mother's grave and talking about Henry and going through this ritual about forgiveness. Now, where it relates to the manosphere, I think if you have led the life of Iceberg Slim, if your mother has not protected you, if your mother has continuously made decisions based on what is right for her and what is not right for you, not protected you against physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, because we heard Steve would always be threatening Iceberg Slim, telling him, if you don't run away, I'm going to do something to make you run away. I'm going to kill you. And he was doing that so the boy would feel unstable enough, so he would take it upon himself to run away. And he wouldn't have to do any dirty work to try and make the boys leave. And when you think about the groups that there are, I'm not going to name any specific groups, but where do you see that kind of environment where women are in a position where they put themselves first, they're making bad decisions where it relates to men, they don't think about their children in their decision making, they don't prioritize their children in their decision making, and everything is about what looks good as opposed to what doesn't look good. And this is why I emphasize, I always use my dad as an example. My dad is not good looking at all, and my mum chose my dad, and they had a very, very happy life. I had a very good childhood growing up, and my dad is not pretty, but my mum wasn't looking at his looks. My mum was looking at, is this a good man? Is he going to provide? Is he going to be there for his children? Is he going to bring up these children? And is he going to invest in those children for their future in order for our genes to carry on and so forth? And that's what he's done. Now, the other reason why, in a way, although we can look at his mother and say, oh, she was crap, she made bad decisions, she was crappy, she was a bad mother, she's a strag, she's a whore, she's a prostitute, whatever bad word comes to your mind when you think of Iceberg Slim's mother. When you think back to the beginning, where Iceberg Slim talks about how his father stalked his mother, because, and he had to, well, not really convinced, but he stalked the mother knowing that he didn't really want to, she was more of a conquest as opposed to him wanting to build a life and start a family and be a family man. She was more of a conquest, but she was an easy conquest. And I think that in itself is one of the reasons why the father didn't value the mother, because the parents didn't value the mother. There was a lot of indication from what Iceberg Slim said. She was one of 10. She came from a poor family. The family were happy to kind of get rid of her. It was one less mouth to feed. So clearly she within herself did not come from a great environment, did not come from a very functional environment, because even if you are poor, you're still going to prioritize I wouldn't even say even if you're poor, you're going to prioritize. If you come from a functional environment, and believe me, there can be poor functional environments. Just because you're poor, that does not mean you're automatically going to be dysfunctional. If you come from a functional environment where there is boundaries, expectations, structure, a moral compass, the value in regards to Iceberg Slim's mum would have resulted in the father looking at Iceberg Slim's suitability as a husband, i.e., right, you've come looking for my daughter. Where is your job? Who are you? Who's your family? What do you have to take my daughter to? Do you have a home? A father who had invested in his children would normally follow some kind of protocol in order to make sure that the child that he's invested into is going to be in a good environment, so she can further his genes and he hasn't got to worry about her welfare and that type of thing. But all the indication is that she did not come from a functional environment. And when you don't come from a functional environment, you can't, and this is one of the flaws within the kind of manosphere, MGTOW, talking points. And the flaw is, I don't know if any of you've seen Back to the Future, and I can't remember which Back to the Future it is. I think it's number 2, where they went back in time, and then not Marty, the guy that hated Marty, the neighbor, him as an old man, he found the DeLorean and he went back in time and started a new future where he was the king of everything, where he got the almanac and he made sure that he was on top and very rich and powerful and controlled everything. That is a bit what happens when you come from a dysfunctional environment. When you come from a dysfunctional environment, you are not going to be of sound mind. And I know a lot of people think it's excuse making, but it's not. But you're not going to be of sound mind to make sound decisions. And the reason being is that if you're from a dysfunctional environment, how do you know it's dysfunctional? If you're in it, you sleep in it, you go to school in it, you're in it every single day, you don't go out, you don't see anything else, but you stay in this one environment. You don't know it's dysfunction. And so whatever the norms are of that dysfunction, i.e., oh, we must go after people with pretty hair, we must if he drives a Benz, he's got to be whatever the culture or social norms are of that dysfunctional society. You're only going to get people from that community who make bad decisions, because that environment has cultivated people who make bad decisions. And don't get me wrong, some people can slip through and think, oh, hell no. But the majority are not. And the thing is, with this manosphere, save yourself, black man, MGTOW talking points, in many cases, I believe that men pick women from those dysfunctional environments and expect them to be something that they're not equipped to be. And I would say that when you come from a dysfunctional environment, and I've spoken about this before, and you guys can Google this, and I'll give you an example. I'll Google it quickly. Is the life history strategist, R and K life history strategist. Now, if you're an R life history strategist, you live today by tomorrow. You're not thinking about the future. You don't invest in your children. you probably have loads and loads of kids, because it's not about the quality, because you're not looking to invest. You're looking to have as many kids as possible, and hopefully out, if you have 10, 2 will reach maturity and carry your genes on. You don't invest in them, you don't look after them, you're just trying to get as many out there because you're just seeing after yourself. And Papa was a Rolling Stone. That's an R life history strategist. Whereas a K life history strategist, that man is going to be thinking future focused. He's going to be planning for his future, planning for his children. He's not going to have a lot of children all over the place. He'll have 1, 2, maybe 3 children, and he will invest in those children, not only financially, emotionally, physically, taking those children out, doing the whole fatherly bit. And then when it comes time for those children to have partners, he will be there to vet those partners and make sure that his children are going to be committing to something that is going to bring something of fruition to those children and continue his legacy also. And that I feel is the main point of this. When you look at Iceberg Slim's mum, she was an R life history strategist. She came from a dysfunctional environment. She was prepped to make silly decisions. When she got her husband, when she was pregnant, sleeping with the prostitute, she's there making emotional decisions, throwing things. Both of them lose their jobs because both of them have low discipline, low self-control. She's very emotional. He couldn't say no to the sins of the city and discipline himself for his family. So both the mother and the father are life history strategists. Now, the mum did show some glimpses of K life history strategy when Iceberg Slim was a baby, and she had to go door to door and offer to do women's hair to look after him in order so that they would eat and survive over winter. But overall, she was an R life history strategist. That's why she couldn't appreciate what Henry was doing for her. And I know, because my daughter even listened to this. My daughter's she's 19, and my daughter was saying, "Mummy, why did she leave Henry? What is going on? Is she stupid? Why is she leaving Henry for Steve? Steve is an idiot." And I said, she did that because she was prepped from the beginning to make decisions within a dysfunctional environment. She couldn't recognize the fact that she was in a functional environment and that her mindset had to change, because you can change your mindset. People don't just stay as one thing. And I'll give you, for instance, and one of the triggers for the changing of that can be stress, can be trauma. Think about men who, when they hit their 50s and they have midlife crisis. And in many cases, because I've read up about this, it's not that men have midlife crisis because they wake up and see grey pubic hair. In many cases, when they reach 50, friends start dying, a parent dies, something of that nature happens, and it starts to make them question their own mortality and think, "Oh my God, I'm 50. I've got more years behind me than in front of me. Oh my God, I've missed out on so much of life. I need to live life now. I need a young bird. I need a drop top car. I need to start wearing shell suits and trainers and caps. I need a gold chain. I need to get out there, and I need to live life like I'm gonna die tomorrow." But and this is what I mean. People can change, but it's recognizing when you need to change. Like a lot of those men that have these midlife crises, normally after they live that life for a while, they're just like, "Oh, what the hell was I thinking?" And they go back to their wife or whatever thing that they've done, they will undo. And women can go through that too, midlife crises as well, after looking after parents, after children have flown the nest. Again, it's stress, trauma that triggers that. But the thing with Iceberg Slim's mother was that she could not recognize, big red sports car. I see that all the time, especially in London, grey-haired gentlemen with no hair, blowing in the wind, just bald at the top. And I just think, oh, it's very, very sad to look at. But yeah, we all got to find out the hard way. But yeah, so Iceberg Slim's mum, because the thing is, when she got with her husband, she, from what it's seen, she was still very, very young. And although she was with Henry for a number of years, I believe that she still hadn't developed the skills to recognize what she had, and that it wasn't something that was going to come. What she had was literally a miracle. What her and Iceberg Slim encountered in Henry was a miracle. But I think when you're young, you kind of overestimate your value as women, as men, and you always think that, well, not always, but many people think that they can do better. And she thought doing better was getting with someone like Steve. She wasn't looking at better in terms of stability, in terms of her son has a father who loves him and who's showing him the right things in life. She was thinking about herself. And that's what happens when you come from a very dysfunctional environment, a very dysfunctional community, a very dysfunctional group. And that's why I can understand if you are MGTOW, Save Yourself Black Man, Manosphere, if you come from that environment that Iceberg Slim has. If you haven't, that life is not for you. That life isn't for you. Because as you can see, a lot of men who have this hatred towards women or this dislike, it's not come from a question of women just saying, oh, I'm not interested in you. This comes from trauma, dysfunction, abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse. There's many layers to it. And I remember on and Light Skin Motivations Live that they had previously, one of the callers, I don't want to really say his name because it's a bit unfair, he spoke a little bit about how his mum abandoned him as a child, and it was his father that raised him. And remember, from 0 to 7, that's when children need their mother. From 0 to 7, male children need their mother. After that, father can take over. It's that 0 to 7 period that's crucial. And that person that called in, who was on the sort of Manosphere, Save Yourself Black Man sort of type rhetoric, he had experienced that too. And that's what I thought of when this passage came up in my recommendation. And that's why I think, as light-skinned men, unless you have lived, and I would have to say that the experience that Iceberg Slim experienced, and remember, these were light-skinned people. Many of the assertions about light-skinned people having a great life, being privileged, being the chosen ones, clearly that wasn't the case here. You never heard Iceberg Slim talking about dark-skinned women who were prostitutes, dark-skinned women who were doing things nefarious. It always seemed to be light-skinned women. And his mother as well, she was not pedestalized in any way by her father. The only person who pedestalized her was Henry. But from all accounts, Henry was a much older gentleman. So she's young, he's old. That would happen anyway. It didn't seem to be a count of her light skin, because everyone else did not treat her in that way. Her husband, Steve, and when it turned out, her son either. So that's what I think, that light skinned men, unless you have lived Iceberg Slim's life, the manosphere is not for you. You've got better things to be doing. And if you haven't heard the light-skinned men and 48 Laws of Power, I would suggest you listen to it. We only got to law number 24, but you guys scored really highly. Really, really high. So again, I would say, unless you've had a bad life, no. Manosphere isn't for you. What are some of your opinions? Let me just look in the chat. Okay. Oh, for grey hair, and what I do is I take zinc 200 mg. If you take zinc 200 mg, you don't get any grey hairs anywhere. No grey hairs. Clinical psychologist and professor of psychology. Who's a clinical psychologist and professor of psychology, Miranda? Okay, I love being 49. Go for it, Michael. Caesar, I'm 43. I have to love my grey hairs. You don't have to, LSP. Just take some zinc and they will go. They will go. It's normally you get grey hairs when you're zinc deficient, and you can go well into your 50s and 60s taking zinc. Now, I don't want the grey hairs, because the thing is, it makes the hairs actually more delicate and more frail. And because I noticed when I started to get it, I could just pull them out, whereas the dark hairs I couldn't. So I just started to take back my zinc. Oh, Jordan Peterson's a clinical psychologist. He's a bit of a strange guy, Jordan Peterson. I looked at one of his videos, and I was analysing it, and I thought, oh, I'm actually talking a lot of tosh. It was really rubbish. I just thought, oh, whatever, Jordan Peterson. Some things he says does have merit, but some of the other stuff he says, I just think is just a bit strange. Very strange. No, I don't love my grey. Well, I don't have grey hairs now, but I didn't like them when I saw them. And the fact that I could just pull them out, I just thought, no. What are your thoughts on the topic, guys? What are your thoughts on Iceberg Slim's life, the light skinned men and the manosphere? What are your thoughts? Because I did notice that Caesar said that you thought that the mother, just go back in the comments, because he said something about the mother liking. Yeah, abandonment issues. Yeah, that's what Michael said. Okay. Yeah, and LSP said abuse as children does create unwed parenthood. Back. I'm just looking at, because there was something that Caesar said, and I just missed it because it was going down. Okay, yeah, Miranda, I could be wrong, but the mum had more attraction for the playboy than the guy who actually cared for his mum and Slim. Yeah, she did, because her priorities wasn't stability. Her priorities weren't about her son growing up to be the best man she could. Her priorities were, okay, what's good for me right now? And right there and then, that was Steve. And she couldn't look beyond that. Yeah, light skin. What's Ophir? Yeah, yeah. I did note that Jordan Peterson called out political correctness, and to be quite honest, it has got really ridiculous, like really ridiculous political correctness. Yeah, it has got ridiculous. I remember a lady, person where I worked, was trying to insinuate that that I was being racist, and I just said, no, I'm not. Yeah, it's just crazy. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, LSP. Yeah, unfortunately, abuse in families is quite common. And to be quite honest, I would say to anyone who's experienced that, it's never too late to contact the police and report any historic abuse. I know in the UK, they have a special unit that deals specifically with historic abuse, because they do realize that it takes people a long time to come forward, because why should you have to sit with that? It's not fair. Okay, right, let's go, Michael. Right, you like the LSP. What's the LSP, Michael? What's the LSP? Light skin people? Oh, and that was the other thing that I wanted to say. Because Caesar did that, I wasn't sure what you wanted in relation to the video that you last did when you spoke about people should tell their story. I'm not sure if you wanted that as a tag, because I think that would be a really good tag for light-skinned people to just tell their story. And I don't think it necessarily has to be like a, oh, woe is me, all these people beat me up and la la la. I think it could be a really good empowering stories of how we've dealt with adversity and come out on top, and how it's made you the successful or the entrepreneurial or the positive person that you are now. I think that would be great, because I was going to do something along those lines, but I just wanted to clarify if you wanted to start that as some kind of tag that people could pick up on YouTube, because you know people do all these boyfriend tags and whatnot. And that was to you, Caesar. The Golden Sphere movement. What's the Golden Sphere movement? Golden and round. Right, let me just remove this tag from this light skin people stand for light skin pride. Oh yeah, that's good. It's very good. Let me just get rid of this second screen. Yeah, so is this a group that everyone's starting? Light skin pride? Is it a channel? Okay, that makes sense, Caesar. Yeah, I think that would be a really good tag to start. I think that would be a really good tag to start. Really positive one. Because sometimes I just don't want us to be like other nameless groups who consistently do the woe is me, or woe is me, or everyone hates me, everyone hates my color, all that kind of stuff. That just really gets on my nerves. And there's a million and one videos like that on YouTube, and it gets quite boring. But I thought it'd be just really nice for us, in terms of what Caesar said, talking about positive stuff, talking about great stuff. Because sometimes I just think, in many ways, sometimes a lot of light-skinned people or biracial, generational ethnic people feel that we have to rebut everything everyone asserts point for point. And to be quite honest, I don't think so. I think we should be more about our action than talking. But I think it's good to know the talking points that are happening. Like in terms of the manosphere and light-skinned men. I think one thing that this has taught me is that women like Iceberg Slim, men like Iceberg Slim aren't born. They're created. They're created by their environment. They're created by people. And if you contribute to the degeneration of those people, then to be quite honest, you deserve everything you get. Because I think the fact that Iceberg Slim mother, her in the first instance where her where her husband abandoned her and her son, her first instinct should have been to be able to go back home. But clearly that wasn't an option for her. So rather than going back home, she went out into the world and tried to forge a way for her and her son. And whilst Henry saw her vulnerability and wanted to protect and cherish it, but to be quite honest, in a way, whilst Henry did that, I think it's because of his age as well, because he was an older gentleman, he could appreciate her vulnerability and respect it rather than want to take advantage of it, which is what Steve and her husband did. So I think in terms of the manosphere and light-skinned men, if you're not contributing to the degeneration of women and children, then I don't think the manosphere argument's for you, because that's not something you've come from, it's not something you've experienced, and it's not something you contribute towards. And I think the same goes for women as well. Because I think there's this whole push towards swirling and all of this. And I have, and to be quite honest, I have to say, I have no problem with Save Yourself Black Man, Manosphere, MGTOW, swirling. And the reason I have no problem with all of that is I realized that there are a lot of damaged people out there. And damaged people need to gravitate towards something. People need to feel a part of something. And I recognize that the Manosphere, Save Yourself Black Man, MGTOW, it allows men to form a social network of likewise damaged men. And that is important because we all need to heal. And in many ways, unless you know someone has gone through the same types of things that you have gone through yourself, you're very distrustful, you're very wary of people. Whereas with this whole Save Yourself Black Man, MGTOW, there's a common theme running through each of those groups. And we're going to start the light skin movement. Yeah, no, I think we should. I think that is a great movement, but it needs a foundation. And I think the foundation should be get out of dysfunctional environments in order to create a prosperous light skin movement, community, people. If you are in dysfunction and you don't have no children, get out now. If you're in dysfunction and you have children, get out now. Get by whatever means possible. If you've got to get yourself an ugly Henry, ladies, I will greet him. I will look past the looks and say, hey, this guy's looking after you. Gentlemen, if you've got to get the equivalent of a Henry, an older lady, to help you get out of dysfunction, hey, I ain't going to judge you for it. If that lady going to help you and your kids, help you be a better man, be a better person, and give back to your light-skinned community, give back to your immediate community, and not take from it like Steve's, not like Iceberg Slim's mother, and ultimately not like Iceberg Slim, because he allowed himself to be pulled down into that world and be corrupted by it. And one thing about dysfunction, there is no honor amongst thieves in dysfunction. There is no structure. There are no boundaries. It's dog eat dog. And that's what happens. But yes, the light skin movement would be great. So I think the first thing to start with light skin movement is saying no to dysfunction, because that is the breeding ground of everything. And that is why I'm going to be doing the other video regarding that is why I wanted, as a follow-up to this, to do the video regarding why alpha men, why light-skinned alpha men should thank their light-skinned beta brothers. Because when you look at Iceberg Slim's story, Henry, by all accounts, would be classed as a beta male. But although to all other men he was a beta male. Oh, who's going? Oh, if anyone's going, I'll see you later. Sorry, I didn't see. Right. Yeah. Although from all intents and purposes, Henry was a beta male. I wanted to look at that further because I think, to be quite honest, alpha men in this society, in this current system that we're in, they are not the prize. Henrys are the prize. And I'm going to be talking about why Henrys are the prize and why alphas are not the prize. And I think it's important for people, especially like people who want to start our own community, if we want to start our own families, it's very important to know the characters that are going to be within your community and how to not how to use them, but how to interact with them and how to allow them to be the best that they can be and you be the best that you can be around them. And that's why I'm going to be using Henry as almost like a case study as to why, whilst alpha men lead the way, it's beta and gamma men who actually sustain everything. Because think of it like this: when you use an arrow, you just use the arrow hits its mark, done. But it's the men who come behind, go and skin the animal, divide up the meat, carry it back to give to the women so they can cook. It's not alphas who are the prize, ladies and gentlemen. It's not alphas. Oh, yeah, the broadband here is a bit dodgy, Caesar. Sorry, Miranda, the broadband here is a bit dodgy. And because it's getting late, it's like 1:30 here, it's going to break up a bit more. But that's why I wanted to do the video concerning, beta males. And it's not to denigrate anyone. It's not to say that alphas have no value and it's just betas that have value. Everyone has a value, but it's knowing where everyone's value lies. Everyone has value, but it's knowing where those people values lie. See, that's the thing though, Caesar. He was beta, and this is the reason why I'm going to be discussing it, because one of the things that misconceptions about alphas and betas is how people think that if you're beta, you cannot be successful. If you're gamma, you cannot be successful. Omegas, they're more likely not to be successful. And that's only because they tend to be mentally submissive, and they don't follow social norms. They can't, and in many cases they can't follow social norms. So they're always on the periphery of society because they don't follow social norms. They can't communicate well with people. People think they're weird. People think they're odd. And where they do, and where they can mimic social norms and social things, people still feel they're quite odd people. So the omegas are at the bottom. Gammas are people who are men who are mentally dominant, but socially, and they reject society. They're not trying to conform to society. They're not trying to, they're always bucking the trend. So I would imagine a lot of gammas are MGTOWs because mentally they are dominant, but they lack, they reject society, they reject social norms, they reject wanting to conform. So I would expect a lot of MGTOW type people would be gammas. Then you've got beta. Betas are mentally dominant. A lot of people don't realize they're mentally dominant, but they lack the social, the social mobility that an alpha has. So in the case of Henry, and the reason I say this was because he was single. They painted the picture of him he was single when he found the lady. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have any kids. So that tells me socially he wasn't, and Iceberg Slim referred to him as being ugly. So that told me that he wasn't deemed as a desirable man in terms of his look, although he was quite successful when it came to business. And remember, within the environment that he's in, and dysfunction reigns, whilst he's successful, people aren't able to appreciate his full package. He doesn't look the part. He's not aesthetically pleasing as a man. And the indication that I got was that he was an older man as well. So like an older bachelor type man. Or what would you call him now? I wouldn't say he was an incel. I would just say he's beta, because he was very quick to snatch up Iceberg Slim and his mum, and he wanted to invest in Iceberg Slim. Although Iceberg Slim wasn't his son, he was ready to invest financially, emotionally, physically into Iceberg Slim, despite the fact that that wasn't his son. And beta males are more likely to accept women who have children as opposed to alphas. And I would say that Steve was an alpha because Steve was an alpha because he had charm, and he was able to get what he wanted. He was aesthetically pleasing. And the thing is, alphas come in many different forms. Not all alphas are successful in terms of finance and business. Some alphas are just successful in sleeping with women. Some are not. Some are great in business and great with women. But the thing with alphas that I'm going to be talking about more in my live concerning light-skinned alpha men and thanking their beta brothers is that the sustainability of alphas isn't that great. And it's not alphas who sustain society, but I'll be outlining that in my life so that everyone can understand and respect where everyone is. There's nothing wrong with an omega. Because and the reason I say that, and it's not to be cruel, is that there's always an underdog. There's always someone at the bottom of society. They don't necessarily have to stay there, but there's always a bottom, because you can always rise to the top. And it's knowing those roles and respecting those roles. Because the thing is, although Iceberg Slim's mother felt she could do better than Henry, which she couldn't in reality, because she never did better than him up to when she passed away. She never did better than him. But the thing is, she didn't respect his role and what he was there for, and she took it for granted, and she messed up because of that. But I think as light-skinned people, if we're looking to form our own communities, if we're looking to form our own social groups, it's important to understand the roles as men and understand the roles as women. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the art of seduction and light-skinned women, and talking about women and what they do. But I think it's important as well to understand men, and I do understand this save yourself, black man, and MGTOW and all of those things. But I think unless you've come from a very troubled background and you're not contributing to the dysfunction that is around, and it's very easy to contribute to the dysfunction. I don't know if anyone remembers, but one of the laws in the 48 powers is always what was it? Not always reject the free lunch. So and I have to say this: if you see vulnerable women who are throwing themselves at you, that's a free lunch. And if you can see a woman is vulnerable and you can see she's dysfunctional and you take advantage of her, you're contributing to degeneration. You're contributing towards the mess of what is happening. And you can do that, but there are consequences for that. There are. But that's why I wanted to go further and sort of discuss beta, gamma, omega, and alphas, and and their roles now, because if you look at Iceberg Slim, that was an epoch in time where it seems that alpha men were more prized. Alpha men kind of got what they wanted on the surface, but did they really? And that's what I'm going to explore further when I do that live. Right, I'm just looking. Okay, good men have the same story as Henry. What is a good man, though, Caesar? What is a good man? Define a good man. It's all about Henry's energy. Slim's mum rejected. Good-looking men with family values have had this problem that Henry has had. See, no one is immune from rejection. But the thing that you have to remember as people is that although you can do your best and look at some, like when you look for a partner, is this person an R life history strategist or K life history strategist? And the thing is, you can see that in their demeanor. Right, okay. Has this person, right, okay, does this person respect themselves? Do they carry themselves in a way where they respect themselves? Like for me, when I used to date, when I would meet a man, if he's very quick to bring up sex and all of that kind of stuff, it made me think he didn't respect himself, because men who respect themselves are not looking to give themselves away on the first date to just anyone. And that's true. Men who don't value themselves, who are just looking at numbers and to get their numbers up and say, I've slept with 10 billion women, they don't care. So I look at how a man, carries himself, what he talks about. The only time I look at his dress is to see, is he dress age appropriate? Are his clothes clean? Does he take care of his shoes? Is he trying to relive his teenage life by wearing tracksuits and caps and stuff like that? That's what I look at physically. Then I look at, okay, what's his dating history? What, has he got kids? How many kids? How many women does he have his kids by? Is he stable? Does he look after himself? How does he talk about his family? How does he describe his relationship with his family? If he talks about himself like, oh, I'm the black sheep and no one talks to me, or I'm not close with my family, another red flag. Because one of the things about someone who values themselves, someone who is a case strategist, is social networks, and maintaining those social networks with family, friends, people of importance. So lone wolves, I don't trust those at all, because none of us are truly alone. And if this person is trying to tell me that they're in this world alone, I just know that they're trying to spin some kind of sob story that just makes me roll my eyes. Let me just look at the comments. What it says. DK Phantom says, me personally, I'm no thug. Some people say I'm kind of. I have common sense and I'm nostalgic dude when it comes to video games, TV shows, movies, clothes, and music. Yep, there's nothing wrong with that, but it also depends on your age as well. And remember, if you're a young man, if you're under 30, I wouldn't expect a man under 30 to be a K life history strategist. I would expect a man under 30 to be an R life history strategist. You're going out there looking to get as many experiences as you can, trying to find yourself, what it is you want to do long term, what it is you want to do short term, where you're trying to find where you are in this world and navigate your way through in order to find yourself. And I get that, but some people don't move out of that phase, and you have to take responsibility for who you choose. And when people say, and this is what I had to say to Caesar, oh, you want to come up? Okay, let me just see if I can rig this so you can come up, Caesar. Sorry, I missed that. Let me just, okay, let me try not mess this up. Okay, invite someone up. Okay, how do I, okay, invite. Okay, copy to clipboard. See, as you can tell, everyone, I'm not the most technical lady in this place. Okay. Paste. Okay. Yes, I'm in my 40s as well, Michael. I don't broadcast it because I know I don't look it, but I'm just trying to just be me. What can I say, Michael? No, I'm 42. I'm going on 43 in the autumn months. Yeah, so I've just put the link in there, Caesar, if you wanted to come up and discuss, because I think one of the misconceptions when people say a good man, how do you define a good man? Because the thing is, men have a perception of what they think a good man is, and women have a perception of what a good man is. And then again, it depends on what stage in your life you're at, what a good man is. Okay. Telling Stuart, I'm not. Oh, here we go. Here's Caesar. Let me see if I can add to the stream. Hi, Caesar. Oops. Have I not done something? Let me just have a look. Authenticate to YouTube. Caesar. Right. Are you able to talk, Caesar? I can't see your picture moving. Oh, yes. I was 25 about 15, well, 17 years ago, Michael. But I think it's because I'm short, I look very young. I'm only 5'2". Hi, Caesar. Are you able to speak? I can't see your little picture moving. Let me just make sure that I've got... let me just see if I have to just remove this. Stop screen. Okay. Okay, Caesar, you're in. Right. Oh, do you want to try again, Caesar? I'm not sure what happened. Just try again, because I had to shut down the other screen. That might have been taking the mic. Let me just make sure this is regulated. Right, okay. In the black community, right, DK Phantom has said, in the black community with black women, there are a lot of them that have different views on what a good black man is. Well, to be quite honest, as light-skinned people, I don't think we should be concerned with what a good black man is, because as light-skinned people, as biracial, multi-generational ethnic people, I think we should just be concerned with what is a good light-skinned man. What are the attributes of a good light-skinned man? First and foremost, I would say that the attributes of a good light-skinned man would be someone who's respectable, someone who has structure, someone who has boundaries. Oh, right, Caesar's back. I think we can add him back here. Hi, Caesar. I think we've got you now. Hello. I think you muted yourself, because I heard myself vibrating, echoing from your page. I don't have him muted, Michael. I've got his. If he look, as soon as I mute him, it will just show on the screen. If I mute him there, but see, I've muted him. But let me unmute. Let me just see if that will work. Oh, it won't let me unmute him now. Right, unmute, Mike. Sorry, this computer is so slow. Oh, you can't hear me when I come. Well, if you can't hear me, if you can't hear me through StreamYard, let me just think about how to do this. Oh, Jesus. Hold on. So I'm just trying to unmute you. Are you able to unmute yourself? Because I muted you. And wait, let me just remove. Just try again. Maybe I need to mute myself when you come up again, Caesar. So what I was saying in terms of what a good light-skinned man would be, I would say someone who is respectful, someone who has boundaries, someone who has structure. I would say moral compass, but our moral compasses change depending on what is moral to us at the time. Okay, let me mute myself. Right. Okay. I've come back. I thought by muting myself it would help Caesar, but okay, right. I think Caesar's sending me a message from the okay. Put the link to my Discord in one of your videos. Okay, yeah, no problem, DK. If you just put the link in the chat or in the comments, yeah, just put your link in. That's fine. So in terms of personality, let me just try and because you are there, Caesar. You just you've gone again. Well, just try and come back again because it's showing from your end that the mic is muted. Yeah. Okay. In terms of personality attributes, I would say it has to be someone who's respectful, someone with integrity, someone who respects himself, someone who has values. Like I said, I would normally say morals, but I think morals are very subjective. And if I have morals on certain things, it doesn't mean the other person will have the same morals, unfortunately. But that's just the way it is. Hi, Caesar, are you able to speak? Because I don't have you muted here. On the little page, if I've added you to it, you might have to undo your mic. Oh, there we go.
You gotta be kidding me. Can anybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We cooking with fire now, huh?
Yes. I feel like Neanderthal discovered fire.
That's partly my fault because I was on the interstate. I pulled over on the interstate to try to get with you guys and talk with you and let you know that I'm a real person. A lot of what you said, I absolutely agree with. But here's the thing that I find to be challenging because I know I like to listen to my golden women. I think you may have missed that. You know, in my videos, you know, I put out a video that asked where I asked for us to come up with the name for ourselves, and people were chiming in saying golden this and golden that and golden power. So I went with that. So that's where I get the golden thing. I didn't get it. It was probably already there, but when somebody told me, it clicked. But
Okay.
as far as being a man and this whole alpha and beta thing, which are only like the first two letters to
Yes.
the 24 sciences here that we're going through as men. It's sort of like the zodiac thing where, you know, I'm born a Leo, but eventually I should be able to be all 12 of the zodiacs.
Yep.
So when it comes to this thing, as far as being a man, I love your input. Let me say that. I love that 48 laws of power with some things I didn't understand. And I think it's so amazing because our women are telling us what's great about us being men. But that's no more different than me telling you about the second trimester of being pregnant. You see what I'm saying? As far as being a man, no man, none. There's a rapper named Too Short. I don't know if you're familiar with him over in the UK, more where you are.
Yeah.
But he was one of the most hardcore, I don't want to call him anti-women, but he was sort of like a pimp rapper. And within this year, he just recently had a little girl. It's just the irony of it is just so funny. And the thing about it is every man, whether he's young and accepted or whether he's older and accepted, we all become vulnerable to women. No different than women become vulnerable to men. No man on planet Earth, and this is from my perspective and from my understanding of a man. I've never seen a man, period, that's alpha all the time.
Exactly.
No man walks into a room where he's the dominant figure all the time. I've watched men of great stature fall to their knees to their wives, to their children. They become vulnerable. The love that they have for their family or their women or their ideals take precedence over any perceptions that others may have of them. So when we're talking about alpha and beta, I'm like, when it comes to men, and whether you go mix, let me say this first, and thank you for having me, Miss Philosophy. I love your channel.
Thank you.
No, any man on planet Earth, and I will say this with boldness, nobody's in one place all the time.
Yep.
Every man is susceptible to what it is that he loves and cherish. So when we talking about Iceberg Slim and we talking about the pimp versus Henry, the thing that I see is this: his mother was attracted to the dysfunction of the community that she come up in. There was no, that doesn't make her an animal, or she doesn't, that doesn't make her a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
We are all used to what we used to.
Exactly.
I'm used to dysfunction. I will speak from my own. I'm used to it. So when somebody does something that's not dysfunctional, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I'm used to the dysfunction. You see what I'm saying? So in a whole lot of ways, when it comes to being a man, we will always have a part in us that's vulnerable to our women. So whether we are golden skin or dark skin or yellow men or whatever the thing may be, nobody's riding the same wave all the time. We have just as many emotions as women. Now, how we respond to that is what makes us a man. When to say, I'm not going to take this abuse from this woman or this disrespect from this woman or this disrespect. And see, if Henry had done that, it would have made for a better story for Henry.
But the thing was, because Henry is from a functional, community and has functional social structures. Remember, by him taking on Iceberg Slim's mother, she was able to join the civic club. They would sit in the front pews at church. He gave her respectability. That's what he was used to. And that's why in the end, the only thing he could think of was to beg her to stay, because he couldn't understand why she would want to leave what she had with him in order to go back to uncertainty, to instability. He couldn't comprehend that, because they're from very two different lives. She's used to dysfunction, and if you even look at her business of the hairdressing, that again was taking her back to the people that were very dysfunctional, because as Iceberg Slim pointed out, the people that could only frequent that place were prostitutes, drug dealers, and pimps, because they're the only ones who had money during that economic era. So subconsciously, whether she knew it or not, or consciously, she's always drawn back to the dysfunction which she came up in. And that wasn't her fault, that wasn't Henry's fault, but Henry himself couldn't understand. Even my daughter couldn't understand. She was like, "Mummy, why is she leaving Henry? Henry's the best." But when you're from dysfunction, like you said, when you're in an environment where people aren't dysfunctional, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And maybe being around when Steve came into her life, she kind of thought, okay, good, great, okay, there's still, okay, I recognize this pattern, I recognize the dysfunction, I'm used to this, I want to be somewhere where I feel comfortable. And she's not talking comfortability in terms of stability. She feels comfortable around people like Steve, around prostitutes, around those type of people that live on the edge of society, because that is where she came up from. That is where she grew up in. That is what she's used to. That's within her core. And although the ideal of Henry and taking her away from that, within herself, she hadn't developed enough to appreciate that whilst she was used to that, that's not what she needed. And that's not what her son needed.
Right. So when I hear MGTOW and that's great points you made, Miss Philosophy. When I hear MGTOW and men going their own way and all of these things, I get it. I get it.
And
but
I do as well.
The truth of it is, though, here's what I gather from it. Everybody's running from the culture. Everybody's, and so even if if you're a light-skinned woman or a black woman or whatever, or white, you're talking about swirling and all that. You're really saying, I'm ready to get out of this culture. But the dysfunction of the culture is stronger than the ideals.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you go, like if men go their own way and they go to Colombia, you bringing the dysfunction to Colombia. Exactly. You're bringing the dysfunction to the white community if you're swirling and you're a black woman. You're bringing the dysfunction everywhere you go. So the problem is not really Iceberg Slim, Henry, his mother, or the pimp. The problem is the dysfunction, the culture.
But the thing is, unless you come out, you cannot see it, and that's what. And it's only after his mother went back into it with Steve and saw how it affected her son, and ultimately how it affected her when Steve beat them up after they ran away. Because there's more chapters in the story where she talks about her regret. That's why sometimes, and this is why I say to people, it's okay to be vulnerable to someone, but pain is there to teach you not to do something again. And even Iceberg Slim pointed that out within the first chapter when Steve beat his mother up, and even in the midst of her confusion when she was healing from when he beat her up, she was still calling for him and still lusting after him in her delusion. But once she came out of that delusion, she did not go back to Stephen, because the pain of the beating broke whatever spell of dysfunction that he had over her, and she didn't go back to dysfunctional men after that. In fact, she became quite religious to try, and I think in a way she became religious to try and atone for what she did to Henry.
Mm-hmm. True that. And this is the last point that I want to make. And again, I appreciate you, Miss Philosophy. The last point I want to make, because it seems to me that because I've heard this story before, so I'm not new to it. So when I was hearing it, I knew what I was listening to. And the Iceberg Slim, this part of it, and they talk about Henry not being attractive. But the truth of the matter is, what I tried to bring up in the message was, this is not limited to unattractive men. There's men who have family values that are very good looking, very dominant when it comes to taking care of their business, who have been through this same thing. So it's not that Henry was, because when you say alpha and beta, in the manosphere, the beta is looked upon as a simp. So that's definitely here in America. Now, there's definitely a difference, because they look at alpha as the king. They look at beta as the help, as the simp, as the sucker. And I didn't see Henry as being a sucker. I saw Henry as being vulnerable to a healthy culture.
Exactly.
Henry was vulnerable and susceptible to be to a culture maybe that he came from. So when I hear these guys in the manosphere who talk about the educated lames and those people who are getting X'd out of the dating game based on the way that they look or their persona, or they may not be as suave or debonair, that's not on them. That wasn't on Henry. It was the dysfunction of the pimp, of the young man's mother, from the community.
Exactly.
So I don't want to say that that Henry was beta according to manosphere terminology. He was healthy. He was healthy. He was a healthy man, and he did what a lot of black men needed, was to take upon a child and give them sustenance and to give them foundation. So according to the manosphere, when they say beta, I don't think Henry was beta. I think the pimp was beta. But he just carried the persona of being alpha.
But this is why I wanted to talk about the alpha, beta, gamma, and omega, because I think a lot of the manosphere, Save Yourself Black Men, and all of those groups, they have the importance of those different groups very mixed up in terms of what in reality is needed in this world. This world needs Henrys. The Henrys sustain this world. The Henrys sustain women. The Henrys sustain children. That, because when you listen to Iceberg Slim talk, he doesn't mention any other man except Henry, who he loved and who had the profound effect on him. And that is why I wanted to use him as a case study, because and again, like you said, we're not all in one fixed position. So at some point, an alpha beta, maybe he's beta to his wife, maybe he's an omega to his parents. He will never amount to nothing, and because his parents have set the bar too high for him to ever reach on purpose, so he never feels as though he's done enough. And maybe he's a gamma to the rest of the world because he looks after his wife, so the world sees him as a simp, and he's just, oh hey, I don't give a shit, because that's my wife and I'd rather be vulnerable to her than you fools. So no one's fixed in any one position. But the thing is, as men, you're going to lean more towards one of the archetypes than all of them. You should be able to function in all of the archetypes, but as a man, you're going to lean more towards one than the others as your dominant function, how you carry yourself in this world. It's a bit like women. Women have there's archetypes for women. There's the queen, the girl, the siren, and there's one more archetype. And as women, we have to navigate all of those archetypes. You can't stay in one, because if you stay in one, you become stunted as a woman, and that will affect your ability to choose a decent mate, as well as knowing your life history strategies, whether you're R or K, because I think that is very important to teach people, because based on your behavior, it will tell you what you are. So even if you're a guy who sees himself as a good guy, but you're just looking for women to sleep with, you're not looking to settle down, you're not looking to build, but you're approaching women who want to get married, want to have children, and want to build, you're never going to have any luck with those women, because you're on two different wavelengths. You're looking to pump and dump, per se, whereas these women are looking to settle down, and the rejection you're getting from the women who are looking to settle down, maybe that will eat up a guy, and he's thinking, oh, I'm a good guy, no one don't want me, why does no one want me, I've got a good job. But the thing that he's not saying is, well, I'm not looking to settle down though, but I'm approaching women who are looking to settle down. And I think there's this miscommunication going, and I think as light-skinned people, if we're going to build this golden people, we have to understand the archetypes, how these things work, how men work, how women work, and not from these quirky little acronyms that men put out there to obfuscate the fact that they're from dysfunction, they've experienced real trauma, or they're there's very socially awkward people who can't really follow social norms, so they're on the outskirts of society and can't really integrate the way that they would want to, because of that social awkwardness, like autistic people, that type of thing, who are highly functioning, but they don't know the social cues and do a lot of things wrong, where people think they're weird when really they're not, but it just comes across that way. And I think in order for us to move forward and away from other groups who are totally missing the mark and totally missing what's important, because when you look at it in its base terms, it's all about miscommunication. And if we as light-skinned people master the art of communication, we can communicate and get whatever we want. We can communicate and get the best out of people and not the worst. And we can navigate this world relatively unscathed. Because if you're a good communicator, if you can understand people just from what they say and what they do, that's half the work done. And that's why I'm going to be doing another live as well. Good night, Miranda. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been 2 hours. You've been really good to stay that long, and I really appreciate it. So thank you, Miranda.
Good night, Miranda. Good night.
Because another thing that I'm hoping to do, hopefully before Christmas, is look at the different personality types, because that's a science that people are not, people haven't really grasped as yet. And I think that alongside these talking points regarding life history strategies, what men are in terms of their archetypes, what women are in terms of their archetypes, known personality types as well, that's a subdivision of that. And if you know people's personality types and you can type their personality, again, that's going to unlock so many doors for us as light-skinned people to navigate, because we don't all belong to one group. Some people are biracial, they belong to black and white, some are black and Asian, some are black and Indian. So we don't all encompass one group. We kind of encroach every other group. So we don't have a basis at the moment. And I think if we can learn from all other groups' mistakes, I think that will put us in the best footing to be able to navigate this world, considering we don't have the foundation that many other groups have, as in countries, established communities, that type of thing. But if we're able to conduct ourselves in a consistent way as light-skinned people to navigate this world, I think that there's nothing not within our reach as people to achieve.
I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that at all. Can you still hear me?
Oh yes, we can hear you, Caesar.
Yeah, I can't with that at all. There definitely needs to be more of a communication of what it is, especially when it comes to dating and pairing up, of what it is that we expect from one another. And I think that's worldwide, to be honest, but definitely for golden people. That's my plight. That's what I'm doing. That's what I do it for. That's who I'm looking for, and that's what I expect the best from. So when it comes to dating and mating, we definitely need to get down to the nitty gritty of what it is that we really want. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of men have been taken for granted, just as many women have been taken for granted, and we're all everywhere trying to find ourselves in other groups, and that's fine. We all got to go through this thing how we go through it. But what you said made a lot of sense. The community, we as a community, and we are a community, we are a people, definitely need to discuss whether we want to be wives and husbands or something else. Because I don't see where in that story with Iceberg Slim, where he actually had that conversation.
How do you mean?
Didn't bring stuff to the forefront. He thought that his behavior was going to surpass her dysfunction, and that doesn't happen. The Black community, what we learning, because I come from those projects, so I am not ill-informed. Apologize for any noise that you hear.
That's okay.
What happens is that culture is like this. Put on your best clothes.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit.
Dirty. I know I'm traveling. Let me see if I can fix this.
Oh, no, that's okay. I understand. But I just didn't want to miss what you were saying.
If not, I love you guys, and we'll talk to each other on the next stream.
Oh, okay. You going now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. What I was saying was, as golden people, we definitely have to have that conversation with each other when it comes to dating, what it is that we are striving for. But when we coming from the Black community, the inner cities, here in America, the equivalent of that in an analogy would be trying to tar a roof in your best clothes. You're bound to get dirty because the culture is dirty. And a lot of what's happening in there it has come to the golden community because we don't even recognize ourselves as a people, a whole lot of us. Exactly. And when we are dating and mating and looking for each other, we don't know what to look for. Because that culture that we're coming from, whether you're Black or white, it's a culture of degeneracy. Everything that is bad is being celebrated. Everything that is good and healthy is being shunned.
Yep. So
when we as golden people are dating, yeah, I agree with you, Miss Philosopher. We need to have some in-depth, DEPTH, depth conversations about what it is that we expect from one another. Henry didn't have that conversation. Henry put everything on the line, thinking that because he was good, that the situation should be good. I've made that mistake many a times. So what happens is he becomes bitter, he becomes depressed, he becomes sad, no more so or less than when women get in relationships with morons and they get depressed and they get sad and they get angry and they become feminists. Yep. They have the same story on their side where they're swirling and they going there, women going their own way. And I can't refute that. There are some morons in the manosphere. There's some morons in Black America. There's some morons in white America.
Yep.
I can't side with one or the other. I have to hear each and every individual story.
But the thing that I have found really interesting about the whole manosphere, is that a lot of people from European descent they have really embraced a lot of the Black talking points within the manosphere, and I find it fascinating to watch how the European, who normally are the symbol of stability and righteousness and morality, they're really trying to, they're really buying into this pump and dump, not being responsible for a woman, never living with a woman, not having children, living for yourself. And I find it quite fascinating, because that isn't the history, the vast majority of the history for European people. And I find it I find it very fascinating, based on how they've embraced these philosophies. Because when they talk about their numbers going down, when they talk about how they're a threat, I just think, well, with that in the background, how do you really intend to maintain your figures if you're embracing this purposeless or self-focused life, which isn't going to produce children, isn't going to invest in your community? It's more investing in a virtual social community of like-minded men who want to live the same lifestyle. And this is why I think we as light-skinned people, we have a lot of opportunities, because you have very much dysfunction on one side, and you've got the dominant group who are buying into this dysfunction and these ideals from people on this side. And I think that really gives us as golden people opportunities to rise, so to speak, from the ashes, and really set ourselves a great foundation in order for people not only to look to, but be a community that is consistent and reliable in terms of producing people who are not dysfunctional, who are purposeful, and who are able to be part of society and their community and give to it and be productive. I think we have a very unique opportunity here.
I completely agree. This is the opportunity for golden people to find each other, to see themselves in one another, to see each other, and to become complete, to become whole, I should say.
Yep.
I completely agree with that. This is the time. In my videos, sometimes I'll say that this is our time.
No, and it's funny because even though I subscribed to you, I only saw the majority of your videos last week because they weren't coming up on my notification. I was just like, when did Caesar do all of these videos? But I'm slowly working my way through them. And I do agree with that. And I think we as light-skinned people, we're very uniquely placed to start setting some standards and start building a foundation where we are going to be respected as a group, and we're going to be relied on as a group to kind of, I wouldn't say be the moral compass, but I would say be a group that is well respected and revered amongst others. Whereas currently we're just kind of lumped in with one group, when this opportunity now for us to establish our own group, and one where we market ourselves and our image in terms of how we see ourselves as opposed to how people see us. Now, don't get me wrong, some of those images aren't bad. Like, I think in terms of the European community, I think they see light-skinned men as very masculine, very handsome men, because that's how I see them marketed within the European community. Is always good-looking, light-skinned, biracial, multi-ethnic men. And I think that's something light-skinned men predominantly can build on. I think just moving away from the whole other group and their kind of their negging tactics of trying to say, oh, light-skinned men are feminine, or all of that. I don't think, in many ways, I don't think light-skinned men have to even justify that, because that group isn't in a position to dictate what anyone is. And I think light-skinned men have the perfect opportunity to build on how the prism in which European people see light-skinned men, which is very favourable over here, I have to add.
I can't tell you for any other people over here in America, but for me, I go where I want to do as I please. And it's really not, from my understanding, it's not really about how others perceive you, it's how you perceive yourself.
It is, but it's building upon how the world, who has built the best version of you out there in the public. And that's what us as light-skinned people need to acknowledge. I think European people have a great perception of, especially biracial, multi-ethnic people, because I think previous that there wasn't very many of them. It was just light-skinned people, and we were just kind of lumped with the other group. Whereas now, because there are more and we're more diverse, and this perception of the diversity and, oh, what are they? Oh, where do they come from? What are they? I think that positive connotation is something that we should embrace and build upon. And there's nothing wrong with doing what you want and how you see yourself. But at the end of the day, people are always going to have a perception of you as a group, regardless of how you see yourself and how you want to carry yourself. And that's why I think we should support other light-skinned people who are shown in ways that favor us and favor how we see ourselves.
Indeed. And this is very important to me. I say this and I'll let you go. I appreciate your channel. I appreciate all my golden people. I try to chime in, listen, support our people. We deserve to be a people. I put the petition out so we can become a people. I will push, I will pull, and I will prod until we become what we need to become healthy communities, a healthy people. I may not see it in my lifetime. I'm 43 years old, but for my daughters, for everybody else's children, I hear Miss LSP stories, the other brother DK, and I'm always trying. I want to hear more from Brother Michael. I want to hear more from my family. I want to hear more what's going on with you, and Miss Teller Stewart, who is absolutely amazing, and she is very, 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 very insightful and very, very much intuitive. And we need all of that to build a community that we are going to build. So, Miss Philosophy, I love you. Thank you for having me. And we will see each other on the other side.
Thank you, Caesar, for participating. I really appreciate it, having the courage to come up.
Yeah, no problem. And salute to you and your family and all is well. And whatever LSP was helping her child with, may their child get the help that Miss Alicia needs. Love all y'all. Y'all take care of yourselves. I'm here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Take care.
Thank you, Caesar. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was very nice for Caesar to come up. And I wanted to thank you all for participating. It's been 2 hours, 33 minutes. I know some bums are numb at the moment. Mine is getting numb as well. I just wanted to go through the comments and quickly just highlight what people have written, because I do appreciate everyone has participated. And Michael, you're a bit of a dark horse. I think you need to come up on some of these lives and speak, because we don't know much about you, Mr. Taurus, okay, apart from you're a Taurus. Okay, DK Phantom. And with me personally, I'm no pump and dump type of person or being around with random people like that. I actually believe in having connections with women as a light-skinned black man. And I have to say, DK, I get the impression that you're quite young, like under 30. And I have to say, to be quite honest, I have no problem with pump and dump. I really don't. And the reason why I don't have a problem with pump and dump is that in this world, young people are exploring, young people are trying to find themselves, and I realize that sex is going to happen amongst young people, and young people are going to want to have to explore. But I would just personally say, as long as it's not at if you clearly see a woman who is vulnerable, someone naive, someone who is not worldly, and you have to really charm her to take advantage of her, that's when I would say no pump and dump. Because if you're going to do that, then you should be able to say to the lady, look, I'm only interested in you for one thing. How about we get down and do that one thing? And she's going to be, yep, I'm thinking the same, or no. If you have to charm a woman and convince her, then there's something wrong with that, for me anyway. So I have no problem with pump and dump. There's some ladies that want to be pumped and dumped. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of them, but there are some ladies out there that do. And I'm all for choice. As long as we're not taking advantage of people, do what suits you. Also, DK Phantom put, Michael Torres, that's what I'm saying. They say light-skinned men are feminine, but what type of men has been caught with transsexuals wearing dresses? Yes. Yeah, a lot have. But isn't Bobby Valentino light-skinned? Or has he been excommunicated from the light-skinned community because of that tranny event that he had last year, that faux pas? What else? Okay. Plus, have you seen TikToks about dark skin versus light skin? How dark skins and light skins act? I was like, these folk are ignorant. See, I don't see the TikToks regarding light skin versus dark skin, because my children are on TikTok, but they just do the dances. I don't think they've delved deep into the whole light skin, dark skin thing. And it's pretty sad from my perspective that you've got this whole platform where people can dance and people can do little dances and go viral and make a lot of money, and you're still bringing your dysfunction and your woe is me and your low self-esteem onto a platform to just for people to see your victimhood wearing it on your sleeve. Just pretty pathetic. So yeah, I would say, DK Phantom, don't even watch those, because even when you watch them, you're giving them some validity. You're giving it every time you watch it, you're saying that's content people want to see. And I've just had enough of those stupid people. Just had enough of them. Yes, LSP. Caesar said he hopes that your daughter gets the help she needs. I do too. I'm not sure what's happening because I haven't gone through far back into the comments, but everyone, I'm going to be shutting down the live because it's getting quite late here. And like I said, I realized that it's been nearly 2 hours, 40 minutes. And I really wanted to try and get these down to an hour but there's a lot to go through, and I really appreciate. I do have to add a little caveat and say that I do realize some of the topic points that I have are hard going, especially the one that I did about Neanderthals. There's a lot of technical detail, but I just think getting that out of the way as the foundation to understand that light skin persecution has been in existence for thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years. This whole talk about, oh, we need to just talk, we need to mediate, ain't gonna happen. It's just part of human nature. The defending of a group against outsiders or perceived outsiders, it's just an evolutionary part of being human, and it's not going to change, and we shouldn't be trying to change that. We should be instead focusing on giving ourselves the best tools to navigate and get in where we fit in, wherever that is, and to get what we want, and to be a group that is well respected and has power to create the reality that we want for ourselves. Henry got caught up with the devil in the blue dress. See, that's the thing. Iceberg Slim's mother wasn't even a devil. She was quite a pathetic figure because she couldn't even recognize when she had won. Do you know how frustrating it is when you see someone who can't understand when they're winning. Like, and this is one thing I have to say to you as light-skinned people, always have a plan. Because the thing is, when you have a plan, then you know when you've won. No one's going to turn around, because remember, we're in competition with everyone and everything. No one is going to turn around and say, oh, Michael, shit, you know what? I know you and me were trying to talk to this lady, and you know what? You won. No. He's going to skulk off, go lick his wounds, but no one's going to tell when you've won. You have to know when you've won. And I think that is the biggest problem in one of the biggest dysfunctional communities that there is, knowing when you have won. Iceberg Slim's mum didn't know when she won. It's only when she lost big she realised that she had won, and she spent the rest of her life regretting it. She spent the rest of her life trying to atone for it. Don't be Iceberg Slim's mum. If you're in dysfunction and you recognise it right now, light-skinned people, get out. Make your plans to get out. Even if you can't get out now, see if you can get out next month, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, but plan to get out. That's the only thing that's going to save you and save your children. Get out. Okay? Well, I want to leave things on a light note. So thank you, everyone. Telling Stewart, DK Phantom, Michael Taurus, LSP, The Golden Artist. Thank you all for joining the live. Caesar, Miranda, I really, really appreciate everyone's participation, and those who briefly participated in the beginning, like I'm Confused and a few others. I'm really quickly trying to scroll up so I can get those names. If there's any links or anything that you wanted to add or for me to put in the description box, just send them to the email that I've got on the About section on the YouTube channel. My next show is going to be about, let me just make sure I can see, getting a bit tired, it is rather late. Let me just check what my next live is going to be about, because I'm inspired when I get a subject. I think, interesting, I need to talk about that. So I've done Neanderthals. IQ isn't next week. I think the next one is light-skinned women and the art of seduction. However, if I'm able to get the PowerPoint working on the laptop, then I will change it for the IQ and light-skinned people, because there's going to be some very interesting things about IQ and light-skinned people, and just interesting things about IQ all in all. And it's not going to be some psychological babble. It's all going to be quite relatable and quite understandable. I will use a few interesting terms, but you know what, I'm going to put that in the chat box and define terms and whatnot, because we haven't all gone to uni, and I didn't go for that long anyway. So, well, just want to say thank you, everyone, and good night. And I really appreciate everyone's participation, and I will see you on Saturday for the next live. Okay, bye.